Yes, welcome into the camp. Badgers in the midst of official visit season. They had a bunch of guys last weekend, going to have a bunch of guys this weekend. We obviously touched on them a little bit in the show earlier this week, but I wanted to get an expert on, a recruiting expert, a guy who just that's his life is recruiting.
Hey.
Just a second. Jesse is sitting this one out, but he'll be back next week with me when we are going to do the swing. I promised that actually on Monday we're going to do the swing, but we're going to do that next week, and then obviously recap what happens this weekend. But I wanted to look back a little bit at what's happened last weekend, look ahead to what's happening this weekend, and we do so with Evan Flood from 247 Sports. His life is not all recruiting, but his job is heavily based in recruiting. So, Evan, I appreciate your time for jumping on here.
Yeah, no problem. I wouldn't want to, jeopardize my reputation as someone who, when you say jump, I ask how high. So I wanted to keep that going.
Appreciate you. You're one of the few. That just, when I snap my fingers, you just come. But no, I'm kidding. But I do appreciate you because you always do say yes, which is my favorite thing to hear. So, all right, let's jump into this. Last weekend was a big weekend for them. Had a double-digit number of guys in. They've gotten 5 commits so far off of that. They're up to 11 for the year or 2026 so far. There are some others that have either that are going to commit at some point, probably going to commit at some point. We don't have to dive into exactly when that's going to happen, but one guy that had a really good visit last week and has been trending towards Wisconsin is Amari Latimer, the running back from Georgia, who has offers from a number of big-time programs out there, right? Michigan, Texas, Georgia. He's scheduled to visit Michigan this week. We'll see if that ends up happening. But the 4-star running back is, I think, is probably the biggest target because they didn't get anybody last year, freshman-wise, the biggest target on their board right now.
Yeah, I would say without a doubt. And, this would probably be, I think you could make a case it'd be the biggest recruiting win for Luke Fickell in his tenure, and he's had some good ones. But this is a guy right out of the heart of SEC country, comes from one of the powerhouse programs in the Atlanta area and Georgia overall. That's at a lot of a top people's board. Obviously, it helps that Wisconsin's got his brother committed, and whether or not the Badgers will pull this out without Jameer Latimer Jr. On their roster, you could debate, but. They've done a phenomenal job here. Running backs coach Devon Spalding has, prioritized him, almost since day one, been down to Georgia a ton to see him, to establish that relationship. And like you said, right now we're just trying to wait and see if he's taking any more official visits. There's differing intel out there as to whether, the trips to Michigan, Texas, and Georgia are all going to happen. I know, Wisconsin really set themselves up well after Latimer visited for that spring showcase in April. And, the vibes are really good. Obviously, he comes back last weekend for an official visit, and, you start to see more crystal ball predictions roll in here. So as far as when he's going to commit, I think it's a matter of, do those official visits happen? I think either way, at the latest, he probably commits is the end of the month, early July. But, if he doesn't end up at Michigan's campus this weekend, I think that's a huge sign that Wisconsin's in a really good spot here.
What makes him special?
I think it's the blend of power and speed. I saw him in person, and he's just built like a truck. And then you think he's a power back, and then you watch his film, right? And he's pulling away from people, from SEC athletes. So he can be not only an every down back, and a lot of people that think he's as good of a receiver as he is as a running back as well. So he's a guy you don't necessarily have to take off the field. You can mix and match him in a variety of different ways. He can play with other people. If you want him to be a 25, 30 carry type guy, he's got the build and the physicality for that. If you want to spread him out, move him around the field as a receiver, get him out in space, he can do that as well. Like I said, this is a big time SEC type back that, normally you see guys like this go to Georgia, Alabama, wherever down south there. Sometimes Ohio State will, go down there and get one as well. So this, I wouldn't put him up there, at least what I've seen in high school. I wouldn't put him up there with like a Melvin Gordon and Jonathan Taylor type edition, but I don't think it's wrong to say he's maybe a step ahead of where Monty Ball and James White were at their point in their careers.
That'd be obviously it'd be a huge get for Wisconsin, and it feels like it's going that way. And again, as you said, it could happen any minute. And so as we talk here on Thursday afternoon, it's very possible that by the time this actually gets out there, he may have already committed, or as you said, might be in a little bit here if he ends up going to Michigan and then potentially taking some of those other official visits. But for him, he's in one spot. There are guys that have committed off this past weekend, 5 of them actually. I'm wondering for you, which one of those 5 is your favorite?
It's close, but I think right now, if I'm talking about the best player that committed this weekend, not talking about long-term potential or where they end up down the road, I like Jack Jonda, the tight end out of Michigan. Now there's not a lot of junior film on him because he only played 2 games. Broke his toe last season. So some of this stuff's hard to find, and you kind of have to rely on the 7-on-7 stuff a little bit. But I think the 7-on-7 stuff is really kind of what makes him intriguing because he's a big physical kid at 6'6", 250 that runs really well for his size. Can create. He's a little bit of a mismatch problem. I wouldn't call him necessarily a field stretcher, a guy that's going to burn people at the second level yet. But in the red zone, big body that can go up and get the football. And then you're talking about Wisconsin transitioning to this new offense under Jeff Grimes, where they're going to be using 2 to 3 tight ends at a time, and they need to get guys at the tight end position who can block to get back to that power run game that they've had. Those tight ends, whether it's a Xander Neville or whoever, those guys are often X factors for this type of offense, and that's what he does. He's probably one of the better blocking tight ends Wisconsin had on their entire board. So I feel like he's a safe floor type guy that is going to be very dependable as a receiver, and of course going to do the stuff that doesn't show up necessarily in the stat sheet in terms of blocking and kind of setting the tone in the run game. But if he comes back from the injury, I think he's got a chance to be a potential every down tight end who could do a little bit of everything.
Any of the guys that commit surprise you?
No, but DJ Ba, I didn't know if he would come this early. He was a guy Wisconsin got in for, I think, May 7th or May 8th that they offered. So that one kind of materialized quickly. I thought the Badgers, things were moving really well for in their direction as soon as they offered, and you could see it moving fast. Wisconsin getting that first official visit, as they often want with their top guys. But I would say this weekend or last weekend went pretty much according to plan. They got, I think we projected at least 4 of those guys going off, and Ba was kind of the guy that, we thought maybe. So I would say it was pretty, status quo in terms of what we expected.
So you're looking at this class, it's 11 guys right now. What is the biggest need remaining for the Badgers? Is there a position that stands out for you?
Well, I would say the biggest need is, to get Latimer.
Sure. Yep.
But, if we're going to just for the
outside of running back
rotation, yeah. I think safety is the biggest question mark in this class right now because you look at the guys on the board, and I don't know if maybe Wisconsin feels better about it than I do, but I don't know if there's a guy I look on this board and say, okay, Wisconsin's definitely a favorite there. There's a lot of guys that they could still get. They obviously had Nick Reddish on campus out of North Carolina, and they're recruiting him maybe harder than anybody. I know Jack Cooper texts or calls him every day that they really want him badly, but Notre Dame's been long viewed as the favorite there. His brother plays at Virginia Tech, so you got some things going against you in that one. They had an early official visit with Messiah Tilson. Again, that's one Wisconsin's done a great job for, but it's a really tight battle with Iowa State. He's also got a visit coming up with Minnesota, and the Gophers have been closing well on these official visits, just as well as Wisconsin has. So I don't know if you want him getting to that one, but he'd be a nice get that turns things around. And then coming in this weekend, they got Chase Jeter out of Virginia. They just got that visit set up this week, so that one's kind of tough to gauge. Zachary Taylor out of Katy, Texas. another guy that they're relatively new for, but it's going to be his first visit to Wisconsin, so you got a chance to wow him there. Then you got 2 more coming the following weekend as of now, at the same high school out of Kell and Marietta, Georgia, Joel Cabay and Tony Forney. Again, 2 guys that you kind of feel similarly about. Wisconsin's probably top 3, top 4 for both of them, but it's tough to really say, that they've got a great shot at any of these guys. So, really eager to just see how this kind of all plays out, because you got about 6 guys that are kind of all in the same boat right now in terms of where Wisconsin stands.
So the upcoming weekend, another big weekend, obviously. Is there anybody, or are there a couple guys that you're watching for as for potential commits, and guys that we should be keeping an eye out for?
As of now, not really. I know we talked about Jeter. I know he's got a visit to Penn State after Wisconsin. I don't know if I see him passing on that one, and Michigan's also getting involved too. If anybody does commit, I think it would be relatively surprising. Jamian Theodore, cornerback from Tennessee, Wisconsin really wants him, and they've kind of cleared out the board to potentially get him, but he's not announcing until July 1st, so we might not know a ton about his situation after this weekend. If there is a surprise, Jalaine Miller, the offensive lineman out of Arizona, I think would be it. This is a guy Wisconsin's been working hard on since December, January. And, talking to him, I've always kind of felt like his values, his personality really lines up with Wisconsin. High academic kid, wants to be an engineering student. So, Wisconsin's obviously got a great department for that, one of the best in the country. And then obviously being an offensive lineman knows all about the tradition here in Madison. And it's going to be his first visit. And, guys that come from out west and out east, typically have some sort of idea of what they think Wisconsin's going to be in their head. It kind of often gets compared to Iowa, Purdue, Indiana, whatever. And, when you get to Madison, you find out that's not what it is. So I think there's a possibility to really wow him this weekend. And on top of that, I think AJ Blazek has done a really good job in his recruitment as well, and formed a really close relationship. He's already passed on, I shouldn't say passed, but he's taken 2 official visits to Stanford and Auburn and hasn't committed, and got 1 left to USC. And, the way they're recruiting and kind of buying up all the talent across the country, you wonder, does a 3-star offensive lineman, really fit what they're doing right now? Maybe that's not a buy type deal for him. So I could see that one. I mean, I'd call it a surprise just in terms of, there's no crystal ball predictions or anything for him. But, if somebody were to commit, I think he would be the most likely.
So Wisconsin is after a number of wide receivers. Do you have a feeling on which one, if any, could end up in Madison?
Yeah, I think Zachary Washington, who visited last weekend, is extremely close or already in. If that's not the case, you can go to the site and read the interview with him and his dad. I mean, both have said Wisconsin leads. Wants to take more official visits, doesn't want to lose his spot at Wisconsin. I think he's still going to go to Michigan State this weekend if my info is not old on that, but I wouldn't necessarily worry about that at this point. I think the Badgers are, fully expecting to get him. They were his first Power 4 offer. They've loved the kid since day one. They made it clear, we're going to host other receivers if you're not committed. And a bunch of receivers have canceled visits as of late. So I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So I'm just going to put 2 and 2 together on that one and say, Wisconsin probably feels really good about getting him.
Nice. Was that a 2005, 2006 reference right there?
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I think I just came up at the top of my head, actually.
Yeah. Good work there. Good work there. Is there like an under the radar prospect the Latimers, the Pettits, with the guys that we are talking a ton about and focused on? Is there anybody under the radar that maybe we aren't talking about that could potentially be somebody that pops up here this month?
In terms of, guys that have set official visits, Mikhail Blade, that one's tough to go ahead and say, okay, Wisconsin's got a great shot with him, but by all indications that they did make a move for him last weekend. Again, you're dealing with some heavy hitters here, and he hasn't taken these official visits to Notre Dame and Michigan, who, have long been viewed as the front runners here. So again, I mean, Luke Fickell and his staff the last couple of years have pulled quite a few surprises on us, with 4-star kids. I think, he's certainly in that discussion. And then Jackson Ford, similar type deal, another edge rusher. I think Wisconsin's done all they can do there. And by all indications, again, helped themselves last weekend and probably moved up the list. Now, his next 3 weekends, he's going to Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. Is the luster of that Wisconsin visit going to wear off if he ends up taking all those visits? I mean, it hasn't always played out that way, but, I remember, who's the Hardy Watts, went to Wisconsin first and went to Clemson and Michigan. Wisconsin held on there. It's happened before, but generally it doesn't work out the way you want when you're not able to close those big names week one. So we'll see. I would say those are kind of the 2 big names that, maybe Wisconsin's not being talked about enough for.
So as I said before, 11 guys so far. Luke Fickell has said they'd like to get between 20 and 25 every class. Do you think that ends up being the case here?
Right now, I think 20 even feels like a stretch to me. They got 9 more coming in the following weekend, but just 8, or I'm sorry, not even 8. It's 7 this weekend. And then, they tend to start filling up and canceling other visits. So, the 9 or 8 or 9 that are currently scheduled is probably going to get whittled down to a few. Obviously, they could make some moves and add some names late, but I don't know. I mean, based on what the board looks like right now, I mean, even the bottom of 20 feels heavy for this class. I mean, they feel closer to finished than they do just starting.
Yeah, for sure. Again, and guys get added as
right. And senior film. I mean, they got a couple camps to go through too. I mean, some new offers could come out there, and then you never know. Usually what happens, if it does get above 20, usually what's going to happen is they're going to recircle back to some names once they, get most of this class put together, come back around to maybe guys they passed on or maybe guys they haven't offered yet and, try and get best type and just kind of go down the list and get best player available type deals.
It kind of reminded me, when did they offer Cairo Skanes last year? That was very late.
I believe that was in season. Yeah.
Yeah. So and the same thing with Carter Smith too, right? The quarterback thing, different things play
out.
out.
Guys decommit too. And all of a sudden it's okay. Well, let's go get them. Yeah. So
right.
By the end, but usually most of the class is going to be done by the end of the summer, but once you get in season, usually I think still optimistic. You can add 2, 3, 4 more.
So right now the class I think is 28th. In the composite or the last couple classes have ended up in the top 25. This one probably not. Is that act
without some more 4-star power here? I'd be very shocked if this one ended up in the top 25.
So I'm wondering for you, do you think the struggles on the field have started to impact recruiting?
I think absolutely. I think it's fair to say kind of the Luke Fickell luster has worn off. I mean, look, every new coach kind of has this honeymoon period in recruiting where, your school's the hot new thing and guys want to get on board. I mean, Greg Gard is, milk toast as Greg Gard did. Even Greg Gard had that run, remember, where he went Brad Davison, 4-star, Nate Reavers, 4-star, Kobe King, 4-star, Tyler Harrow ended up being a 5-star. He went 4, bang, bang, bang. So, I mean, every new coach kind of has this. Now, obviously, the results on the field for Wisconsin haven't, been what most of us, if not all of us, have expected. I think it's natural that, you're going to see some setbacks in recruiting. And you just look by the number of offers they were making last month. Wisconsin, in the first 2 years of the Fickell era, hadn't necessarily been doing that. They were in on a lot of Plan A and Plan B guys till the end there. We're seeing a lot, more offers come later, which I think suggests, that they're not hitting on these top-rated guys as much as possible. I mean, even though a lot of these commits ended up visiting the first weekend, you look at Ben Wenzel, late offer, Arthur Scott, late offer, DJ Ba, late offer. So those are 3 additions that they just got in here kind of at the very end of their recruitments. And there were a lot of other offers, guys that didn't visit, that they've had to move to. So, yeah, I think it's, to answer your question, I think it's safe to say that, these less than stellar results on the field the last 2 years absolutely have a dip in recruiting. I think that's natural for any program, that those two kind of sort of go hand in hand, unless you have a huge NIL bank to work with, and then, the wins and losses don't matter as much.
USC, how you doing? But like the long-term aspect of this, if you turn around and have a great year, it goes right back the other way. So it's not like it's something that just can't happen. Now, again, the problem for the 2025 Badgers, and we did our positivity episode a few weeks ago, so I don't know that I need to dive back into the positivity mode here, but that's going to be tough to turn around, right? Like, it's going to be specifically this year, it's going to be difficult to get people feeling good about it unless you pull some of these upsets, unless you have like an insane October. I think it's potentially that this is going to continue to hurt them on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, but I mean, the funny thing about it is when Wisconsin is recruiting well, they haven't played well. At least, Paul Chryst stacked at the time. Paul Chryst stacked 3 of the top-rated recruiting classes together back to back to back, and he flamed out. I mean, when I don't know if it. I mean, I know you can't look at it this way, and I don't know if there's, some type of deeper correlation where maybe you're just getting a hungrier player that sticks around and develops. Obviously, we're talking about 2 different eras now, so I don't know if it's fair to point out, but Wisconsin was kind of at its best when they were hovering in the back end of the 30s, high 40s. I mean, that was their sweet spot. And then all of a sudden they started to recruit really well, and the program went the other direction. I mean, that's probably somebody in the recruiting industry. That's probably something I better let from mine. I'm going to tell you like it is, that they had a better team when they didn't finish higher in the rankings. That's just what it is.
Are you trying to say that the recruiting rankings don't matter?
They matter in the sense that the teams who are winning national championships are recruiting, at a top 15 level. But for the longest time in both sports, Wisconsin's been the exception to the rule. They've always done, I think, doing more with less is kind of the bread and butter around here, right?
It absolutely is. And it has been for a long time. And it's more difficult in this era because guys, if they aren't playing, they want to go somewhere else, and they have the ability to go somewhere else. I feel like I've talked about this ad nauseum, is there has to be something done with the transfer portal. We can talk about NIL, we can talk about rev share, we can talk about whatever you want. The thing that is impacting college sports more than anything else and making it very, very difficult, not just for Wisconsin, but I think for a lot of schools and a lot of fans, is the transfer portal and the ability to get up and pick up and go somewhere else like that and be able to play right away. And I don't have a problem with it happening once. I have a problem with it happening twice and 3 times. In basketball, where you have a guy playing at 4 different schools in 4 different years. Like that is, exactly who we're talking about there. And I look, if he wants to get his money, okay, he's taking advantage of the situation right now. That situation is not long term, is just not palatable for a college sports to be able to hang on and be the thing that we all want it to be. And I know it's not going back to what it was, but it can't be what this is right now.
Right. The problem I think you run into, I'm with you 100%. I hate the fact that these guys can pick up and leave. And don't give me the line about, well, coaches can do the same thing. There's 2 different types of people and different. I'm not saying you would, but the opposite end of the spectrum is, well, coaches can do it at any time. Well,
yes, they can. And guess what happens to them?
Yeah, there's also buyouts.
Yes. Yeah. So if you want to leave, we'll put it in your contract that you put in your contract and you give this money back. Like, that's just the way it's going to be.
But with the money thing now, I don't know. And now the NCAA is doing everything they can to not call these kids employees, even though they are.
Yeah.
How do you enforce? Is it legal to stop somebody from making money? How do you step in and say, well, you can only transfer once, but I could take another job. I can't take another job where they're paying me 2x. And I have to stay at my job where I'm making 1x. How do you go about that?
Well, it's the same thing with a lot of people in our industry. It's contracts, right? And how does that work? Do you have to, again, I don't know the business aspects behind it. Do you have to call them employees to have contracts? Perhaps you do.
You could still, I mean, we can still leave
But-
our contract anytime. You're right. You
can leave your contract, but you can't go to it. You can't go to another. Like say you wanted to leave someplace and go to another place, but you have a contract with this one place, and this other place does the exact same thing as the place you're at right now. You can't do that.
Yes,
like a non-compete, right?
Non-competes are gone.
They are, but you have a contract. If you have a contract, you can't just leave and go to this other contract right away.
Right, but
correct.
Who's gonna sign that? Who's gonna sign longer than a 1-year deal? The way things are going,
well, I think certain guys would, but I guess what my point is, and I guess what my point is that there has to be regulations in place because the transfer portal is killing us.
Oh yeah. I think,
and I don't know
everybody. I deal with the hardcores for most of them. I mean, they're going to love college sports no matter what. Yes. But the average fan and even slightly above average fan, I think, hates this and has lost complete interest in the product.
Yes, and it doesn't hurt, or I should say, it doesn't help that the team that we cover has struggled, and so it makes it even more difficult for fans to buy in because their team. Not only is it not knowing who a lot of these guys are.
Right.
Evan, there's like 35 or 40 new guys this year. It's like between the transfers and the freshmen, half the roster is different. And so it's very difficult for fans to buy in, especially when the team isn't winning. And I think that's what it makes it even tougher for people.
And just when you get to know these guys too, they're gone.
Right.
Just when you start to feel something for them.
Right. Like
out the door.
I would have loved to seen Elijah Hills build up through he wasn't ready, obviously, but he built up through an entire year because he was an emotional dude. And Perkins, for the one that they brought in along defensive line this year, can you imagine? He would have been great to have the last couple of years. He's an absolute delight to be around, it would seem. And he's got a lot of energy. And like, those are the type of guys I think fans would come to love. And maybe they will with him. He's going to be here for 2 years, but the 1-year guys, it's very, very difficult. But
you feel differently about. Let's just take an average play like CJ Getz. Nothing great about his career. Started 2 seasons. Program guy.
Yeah.
People feel differently about him than. I mean, it wasn't the same player like Elijah Hills was. Elijah Hills was probably more impactful in that 1 year. Now. A lot of that was Wisconsin couldn't get a sack to save their life. So, any other season, we might not be talking about Elijah Hills like that, but Elijah Hills is going to be forgotten about in 2 or 3 years. CJ Getz, at least with the people I do, people will remember that name.
Unless you have just an insane impact on a season, like a John Tonje. And even John Tonje, like when you think about the best Badgers of all time, he's not going to be on that list. Even though he had one of the best seasons of all time. Like, you're not going to be thinking about John Tonje as Badger forever, right? Like, I don't – you might, but I don't think, like, the average fan is going to sit there and say, I like John Tonje more than Josh Gosser. Even though his impact last year –
He's the exception. Oh, he was so good.
John Tonje?
He's the exception, yeah.
Okay, all right.
He's the Russell Wilson. He's the Russell Wilson exception.
Oh, okay.
Right. Like, he was just that good. Like, everyone talks about Russell Wilson as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
He was the greatest quarterback. He was the greatest.
Then John Tonje can go in there too.
John Tonje's not the greatest.
John Tonje can take someone else's spot who did something.
Is he better than Johnny Davis?
Did something very, very bad, and we don't.
Oh, you want to retire his jersey? No. No, you don't want to do that?
Retire his jersey? He had to make a Final Four to retire his jersey.
Yeah, he had to make it out of the first weekend to retire his jersey.
Not his fault.
That's why Greg Gard's never. No, this is the camp, and I'm joking. We'll do the swing next week. But this actually brings up one more thing I want to talk about because you mentioned CJ Getz. Where was CJ Getz from?
Waukesha.
Wisconsin kids sticking it out because.
Is that not accurate?
CJ Getz, I think he's from. I thought he was from.
I know where he's from. He's from Waukesha.
I was going for Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Which he is from
I
Wisconsin.
still want the points.
Didn't he? I mean, I thought, did he go to Marquette?
Yeah. No, he went to Catholic
Where'd he go?
Memorial.
He's a Catholic Memorial kid. All right. So Wisconsin can land those kids after all.
Not
no?
the show. You're going down this road, aren't you? Okay.
No, I'm not. I'm
Let's
not.
do it.
The show, or I should say the road I'm going down is a tweet popped up yesterday.
No.
From, you know what I'm talking about.
I happened to see it. Normally I don't read. I don't know why I saw it, but I saw it. Somebody retweeted it.
Yeah. So, yeah, a coach from Lake Mills, the head football coach at Lake Mills, his name's Tyler Huber. He tweeted at the Badger football account, quote, "Win your state of Wisconsin in recruiting, you're not. We have had Big Ten teams come recruit our hallways the past 3 years, with the Badgers being 20 minutes away, not being one of them. Be better. Sincerely, Wisconsin high school coach." Do you have an initial reaction to that?
My initial reaction is this feels like it's about something else.
Okay.
Well,
First of all, 20 minutes. First of all, 20 minutes, not 20 minutes away, but go ahead.
You say win your state, which you could, I would leave it at that. I wouldn't go into, you need to be at Lake Mills High School, where I don't know anybody. I mean, I think they got a quarterback right now, a 2027, who may or may not be Power 4 level. I don't think he has any Power 4 offers just yet, but I believe they also went there, if I'm not mistaken.
So there's, go ahead. Sorry.
I think him saying Wisconsin hasn't been there, I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure they were there. And again, this isn't like a kid that is even a 3-star right now. I haven't seen him live. I don't know where he is. As far as I know, he doesn't have any Power 4 offers, like I said. So I don't know what you're upset about in that regard. Like I said, I would have left it at win your state. I don't think in-state recruiting, especially in this day and age, is end-all be-all. But you know, you're Wisconsin. Barry Alvarez worked hard to establish the fence around the state. That fence has had some holes in it. You're also limited into the, with the academics and, where you are geographically, you're limited in the type of players you're going to typically get. Winning your state is an X factor you've always kind of had. Now, again, 2 different eras. The walk-on thing's not there anymore for the most part. Not that they don't have walk-ons, but they're not very many. And, you're not going to see stories like Jared Aberderis all the time, like you were here. So I think it doesn't Jesse Temple usually run a thing with high school. I haven't read it, but so he's not the only coach that's had a problem with Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to leak anything that might be in there, but I think from what I've heard, this guy's saying, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to, I don't think Jesse's going to be doing that article.
No. Okay. Well, anyway, I think it's kind of on par with how a lot of high school coaches have felt about Wisconsin. And I think part of that is just, there's not a Wisconsin guy running the show anymore. It's not one of the buddies, Wisconsin, even Paul Chris, Brett Bielema, they always kind of had an in-state guy, former player, whether it was Ben Strickland, whoever, kind of running the show in the state, going school to school. It's a different program. I can see why they feel that way, but I don't make too much out of it. Like I said, I think this feels like it's about something else because it doesn't make sense that they need to be at Lake Mills recruiting that school extremely hard now. Again,
I think it's about relationships for sure. And I think building relationships is always important. And I don't know if this is accurate because Chat GTP is probably not always accurate, but I'm gonna at least throw it out there. I asked, when's the last time a player from Lake Mills, Wisconsin, went to a Division I school and played? Hasn't happened since at least 2000.
Okay. Yeah. So if this were like the Mequon Homestead coach or.
And we can't see who likes
Catholic Memorial.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to knock the guy. I don't know him. I don't know what he's, like I said, I think it's about something else. I don't know what he's maybe trying to get at, but it's not about recruiting Lake Mills. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, like there are I don't know how many schools in the state produce D1 talent on a regular basis. Like if Wisconsin was not recruiting those schools, and again, I'm not saying that Wisconsin hasn't recruited Lake Mills or doesn't have relationships with Lake Mills coaches. I would assume they do. I would assume they come to the Wisconsin Coaches Association thing that happens in the spring all the time. I would assume that there have been conversations with those guys, but you've had Big Ten people in your hallway the last 3 years, but they haven't taken anybody. And I guess, do you have, so there are, I went and looked, there's 400 high schools in the state that are playing football between 11-man and 8-man.
Yeah.
Do you build relationships with all 400 of those coaches? Like, I don't know how you do it, especially in this environment where
it's spread out too. Like, you never know where a kid's going to come out of. It's not even the power programs. It's not an annual thing, but where there's going to be a guy there. I mean, you go there anyway, but you
go to Arrowhead and you go to Mequon, you go to Arrowhead, you go to Mequon, you go to the really good programs on a regular basis, and you have that relationship. And, if we're being fair, there have been some grumblings from those places as well. Certainly. I mean, a guy like Garrett Sexton ending up at Penn State because Wisconsin was so slow in offering him, right? So that stuff, even at the big schools, it happens. But there were some quote tweets there from some other coaches agreeing with him. But
you have to tell me what they're not doing, because they are. I mean, they are going to these schools. I think it's obvious. They dedicate in each eval period, they dedicate a whole day to just Wisconsin. The whole staff that's been going out.
Right, but how many schools are they getting into than that?
They went to ones without even kids at it. I saw, because I had to look up, and there's nobody there. I mean, there might be an FCS kid or something, but there's nobody that they had to get. They were still going.
Yeah.
So I'd have to talk to them and say, okay, what are they not doing? Because they're there.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe for him, they went to all these other schools, but didn't stop by Lake Mills that day. Like, I don't know. And there was a tweet from, I think it was a couple weeks ago, from the Lake Mills football account that said, "Thanks for recruiting our athletes." And Wisconsin's logo was in there. Now, again,
there you go.
But does that mean that they were in the building? Right. Like, I think that's maybe what it is. But to say they haven't been in the building for 3 years, that's a pretty big swing. I mean, you have to be positive on that one. But he's the head football coach. You would think he would be.
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way, it is I would say inside that building, Wisconsin's building, they at least, I think it's on their radar, but I also don't think that they're probably going to overreact to the head coach of Lake Mills High School saying this.
The other thing is, like, why you might have a kid one day. Why would you potentially turn Wisconsin off to you? I mean, Wisconsin missing one Lake Mills kid, whenever that might be, isn't going to be extremely detrimental. But that kid, probably 90% chance, if and when he does come out of that program, is going to want to go to Wisconsin. And that's a bridge I wouldn't burn with a tweet.
So, speaking of quarterbacks, way down the line, I guess not that way down the line, a couple years down the line, there's a kid at Oak Creek, JJ Chapman, who just picked up an offer from Purdue. He's going to all the camps, doing all that stuff. Is he going to be legit?
I haven't watched him in a real game. He came to camp last year. I mean, he could sling it. There's no doubt about it. I didn't want to do too much on him just because he was going into his freshman year and he hadn't played a varsity snap yet. But the eye test, he kind of jumped off the page with the throws he was making. I mean, he was at the spring showcase too. Looks like, I just looked at his profile. We got him listed at 6'1", 185. He's bigger than that now. He's probably 6'2". or so, or definitely pushing it, if not all the way there. So he's definitely got some arm talent, threw a great deep ball. If I didn't know any better, I wouldn't have thought he was a freshman, that's for sure. So he's definitely someone to monitor here. I know the staff's already had him on campus a couple times. Brian Calhoun's coaching there, right?
I was just about to say that. Yeah. And guess who this new head coach is?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if the alumni, I'm not going down that road.
Yeah. Yeah.
It certainly doesn't hurt Wisconsin that Brian Calhoun's there.
It doesn't. We actually had been doing these fullback interviews with some alumni, and is everyone happy? Probably not, but that's what comes with losing. But I certainly think Brian is still heavily invested in Wisconsin's program, and I would assume they've been in that building and will continue to be in that building.
Oh yeah, they have been. I know that.
Oak Creek or Lake Mills? No shot to Lake Mills. One of my favorite places to stop on the way to Milwaukee, but getting into the city, Lake Mills, probably I haven't done that a ton. No shots at Lake Mills though. No shots. We should probably go take a visit just to say
I've been to Lake Mills many times.
You been to Lake Mills High School?
Yeah. I've also just been to Lake Mills.
Everyone's been to Lake Mills.
They have a beer garden there called Tyrannina.
Oh, okay.
I don't like it, but I've been there.
You drink?
If you like IPAs, and I don't. So if people like it, I don't care for it. If you like bitter beer that makes you do the thing, and when the cop drinks the pee and Dumb and Dumber, and just that's your thing, go to Tyrannina. Not me. I'm not IPA.
Okay. All right. Well,
we
covered it all.
Did I insult you?
You did not.
Okay.
I will drink. I'll drink almost anything. Not the pee, of course, but I'll drink almost anything that is going to lead to me feeling better about things and get drunk. So, yes, but you're not. Again, we have been out during bowl trips. Didn't get to go to a bowl trip last year, unfortunately, but we've been out during bowl trips for drinking. And I feel like you're like a drink like once a year type of guy. You're like Jesse.
No, not anymore. I was, and then I had kids, and then I discovered bourbon, and now I'm a big bourbon guy. Okay, that takes the edge off. Real nice.
Okay, all right. Well, we need to get in more. We'll get into more of this. We'll get into more of this next time you're on. Okay. And hopefully,
I'm sure people are heavily invested in
your bourbon drinking.
My Friday nights.
Absolutely. Everyone loves the behind the scenes stuff, Evan.
Okay.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, all right. We'll be back next.
Go ahead. Sorry. I'll shut up now.
All right. Jesse and I'll be back next week. I appreciate Evan jumping on, and we'll talk to you guys soon. You've been listening to The Camp.